It says this conveyance is made the 21st day of September 1965 between Albert Edward Burns and William Henry Isaac, Arthur Main and John Franklin Schofield.
I'd love nothing more than welcoming the next group in.
It's not just about giving a service, it's about spreading the peace to people.
Wow, and how different that looked.
Yeah.
And the outdoor swimming pool.
You had to be brave to jump in. People just loved it.
We knew the Lord wanted it for the church and for the children.
I think it's a place that builds people up.
Everybody who's made Dunfield happen, their spirit is here.
We were 32, was it 32?
Something
About
like that.
32.
Young.
So when they brought us down to look at it, this big house with all these doors and windows and rooms.
Polythene all over the floors to keep the floors clean and tidy because they've been polished up. I said, Lord, is this right for me? And it suddenly came, I've brought you to this house. And that was it.
The youth leaders in the church were inspired by going to other church campgrounds and longed for the time when they could have their own building.
They had always had to rely on having their reunions at places that they had to rent, like Nash Court.
The enthusiasm then for somewhere, was great. You could feel it.
So I think it was a good 2 years that there was this buzz around the Mission Centre.
We had a paper every day, the Birmingham Post. They used to have a section in of different houses throughout the Midland area, and Dunfield House was in it. It was a house with 17 acres of ground, which ideal for camping as well as house had so many bedrooms, which was meeting rooms.
There were two bequests from two people who actually made it possible for the church then to also give a grant to buy Dunfield.
Dunfield House, reputed to be a haunted Victorian mansion in Kingston, has been bought for $17,000.
It's just an incredible place to come, having come from the middle of Leicester out into a place like this. It's so open and wild.
I thought it was really posh, I thought, wow, fancy the church owning a great big mansion in the Wild Border Hills,
All the beds arrived, didn't
All
they?
the beds had arrived.
They arrived on the Wednesday.
Then we had the mattresses come. They had to be taken all upstairs. Yeah. There's only the two of us.
And we got no cooking facilities except for 3 gas things put on top of the Arga because we got no fuel for the Arga, and we had to look after them for the weekend on that.
They were the pioneers. I would have thought it was really hard for them.
It was hard but enjoyable, if that makes sense.
We knew the Lord was behind us and pushing us on to, make it go. He wanted it for the church and for the children.
The first groups we had from the churches were quite small. I mean, the first reunion, there was only about 40 people.
We're very formal.
Very formal, yes. They're definitely more sort of regimented than some camp is now.
My life was one that was being wasted in a sense. And because people took time to talk to me, to speak to me.
It would be suits and ties and white shirts for worships in the evenings.
No t-shirt and shorts.
No. and shaking hands.
We take things so seriously. We take our souls so seriously. We become egotistical and thus lack the power to make our testimony really effective.
The first time I came was to a junior camp, and in the evening, once you went to your bedroom, you stayed in your bedroom. Whether it happened. So the girls would all congregate in room 2 for the evening session, and 3 people on a bed sort of thing.
Huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, and how different that looked.
Yeah. And 1970s wallpaper. God, it's dreadful, isn't it?
Do you remember when we took some wallpaper off in dining room 1 and we found something like that?
Yeah.
There was about 4 layers of it.
I know, yeah.
And the original shop. I've never seen it like that. And the outdoor swimming pool.
Wow.
Well, it was so cold, wasn't it, the outdoor? And I remember being thrown in, and I remember other people being thrown in.
You had to be brave to jump in. But that was used also as a font for baptism.
My first primitive was the first original, and it was primitive.
You didn't have any of the luxury of food being prepared for you. You did it over your own piles and everything.
We heard about what it was like, you're going to be living under canvas and you've got to help with the cooking and the washing up and all that sort of stuff.
Dig the toilets.
Dig the toilet, yeah.
The latrines.
You had to dig pits for the toilets and all the waste products that come from the kitchen, etc.
We had discussion groups, we went out on overnight trips, and we could go canoeing.
You went out walking, there was no cars following with your things that you needed overnight. You took it with you.
You did rough camping, so you didn't have tents, you just slept under the stars, and at 1 o'clock in the morning the heavens opened up and we were drenched, absolutely drenched.
I remember the dance of the 7 sleeping bags.
Throwing them around the fire.
Just these sort of heads above sleeping bags.
Well, we ended up packing up and hiking all the way back, soaking wet. I got my eye on this girl, so I decided during camp I would go and sit next to her at the campfire, and Helen ended up standing up and walking over and sat on the other side of the campfire, so she played hard to get, you know. The following November the 19th we got married, so, and we've been married 47 years.
You had those incredible experiences and those foundational relationships that you have with each other in the church, and that was when we really sort of got to know people of my own age in the church that were outside of our own congregation.
It was very special. It was very
Definitely.
special. And when you went there, if you had any doubts, you went away with a renewed faith. It was very much about growing in the faith that we had.
The current building was built around about 1850, we think, definitely sort of the Victorian era.
So was the handyman, and he actually did work for the people that lived in the house, and he said that the original driveway up to the house was down the centre of the big field. The carriage and horses used to come up the field and then all the way up here and then into the stables.
We were told by a historian that there is a hook that's an original feature of the main building that she believes originally would have been used to either pull laundry up or bags. We have rigged it up to give it a go and see if it works. Ready?
Yeah. Hold away.
And it's working!
Right.
Ha!
Come in. Yeah.
Wow,
And woo. I've got it.
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely perfect.
It works.
We was locking up one Sunday and a oldish lady, and she wanted to look round the house because she'd lived here.
But she'd never been in the third dining room because that was the servants' quarters and she was never allowed there. The second dining room was her father's study, and again she was never allowed in there unless he had summoned her. And all the attic rooms and that back staircase she'd never ever been up in because that was the servants' quarters up there.
Go through here. This is where cleaners keep all their gear. But if we go up by the door, we've got this here, this mechanism here. What happens is someone in the room would pull a cord or a chain and it would send a signal to someone down here that they wanted their breakfast, and this was the way they communicated.
It was requisitioned during the war by the Canadian Army, and they had the white officers stayed in the house and the black officers camped in the field, and the family that lived here were moved out into the cottage at the bottom of the lane.
So in here is the Dunfield safe. So it's quite a heavy door to open here. And the story goes is that the soldiers' wages were in here and someone had lost the key so they couldn't get them out. So they had to blow out the back of the safe in order to get the wages out and then had to brick it back up again.
It was then a bed and breakfast. It was called the Guest House with a Difference. And we've got photos from a lady who came here when it was a guest house.
We did have a lot of school groups. Solihull Music, they came. We had them about 5 times a year, didn't we? And then it went up to more.
On a Friday, all the parents used to come and watch the production. It was like you go to the theatre, and it was amazing.
One of the directors, he used to have an accordion and he'd take the children around the grounds and he'd be playing, it was like the Pied Piper, and the children just playing instruments, ringing bells and banging drums.
I like the music groups.
Suzuki. You could be walking around the kitchen and hear a bit of the Jungle Book, that end. You're walking around the stables. It's usually what I feel is the song from The Little Mermaid.
The best one I ever had was the rec hall. and they put Queen on, Bohemian Rhapsody, and the kids all sang the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody.
I think one of the most important things is that the children's holiday camp was started as a thank you for being able to get Dunfield House.
I went and interviewed with the children's officer in Hereford and said, could you provide 40 children for a week at Dunfield? So he looked at us and he said, I can give you 400.
So Bill and Mary had got all these groups coming in, and they've been established groups right through. That's their legacy that's still going on.
A few weeks ago, a guy came up and he just said he had come here 50 years ago with his school. And then we walked into the bedroom where he had stayed. Immediately he was like, oh, that's my bed. And he actually got quite emotional thinking about his time at Dunfield. You know, we're used to church people showing, but I don't think people always get to see how much Dunfield means to other people who have come here over the years.
In 1980 was 15 years after Dunfield had been bought, and they actually paid off the loan that they'd had, so actually they were debt free.
The only thing we remember was the hymn, wasn't it? You know, the hymn that Dennis wrote. You know, it's been sung so many times, you know, here, so.
Dennis was the managing director, and he used a very familiar tune.
Eternal Father, strong to save,
Yeah.
a mariner's hymn.
I think it's sung at every activity that's at Dunfield.
Reunions in those days was very big, You always had your theological study session in the morning, and you always had the service.
There was lots of hymn singing. It was just for the sheer joy of singing, and it included everyone.
And you always had the end of reunion pantomime show type thing, where you've got people putting on acts and whatever.
And I'd like you to give a warm welcome to Baba singing Dancing Queen.
I remember the first few youth rallies I came to, I brought a friend from school with me.
They wanted to get people together to basically compete more around the region. I think the biggest one was probably about 180 people here. So they were actually in the house, the stables and the grounds as well. during that time we had a first sort of revamp of the stables.
The swimming pool went from an open air swimming pool to the indoor pool.
People just loved it. It really made an addition to groups coming in.
I'd love nothing more than walking out of this empty building, out the front door, and welcoming the next group in.
It's not just about giving a service like any hotel you was going to. It's about spreading the peace to people.
It was a big responsibility, but I think it was something that we relished really at the start.
You want it to be not perfect, but you want it to be right.
The first time I think I saw a coach come up, it was a bit daunting because you're thinking, okay, there are really 80 people turning up on site and 80 people do want feeding for the entirety that they're here.
And a building this size, there's always something that goes wrong with it. And actually, if the freezer goes, you need a freezer. You can't function without that freezer.
When you've got school kids, they get up to all kinds of antics. And the kind of things that they flush down the toilet cause problems. And you get things like toothpaste tubes come flushing down. And this was Christmas Day, and we saw it seeping on the front. So I got the keys in and I pulled it, and it just exploded. And Matthew said, "What do you want me to do, Dad?" And I said, "Just run to your mother and tell her to run me a bath quick."
You have this alliance with the house, if you like, you know. You talk to it sometimes, you know. Well, let's treat it like a person, really, you know.
I do have this thing about the last car over the cattle grid, because there's just a silence comes in the building.
I didn't like Dunfield when the lights were off. It just, you lost that sort of feeling.
And no kids shouting and screaming, no sounds coming from the kitchen, no music, nothing. Very weird.
I used to love doing the recreational and the memories that, you know, came flooding back. And yes, you get that feeling of what you've shared with everybody over the years.
I think it's a place that builds people up and gives them that strength to go forward and to whatever they're doing. And obviously being a force for good, we would hope.
We also need that space just to be and to feel safe and just get our thoughts together to just be a little bit stronger going back into the world. The campfire site on a starry night is just, you know, you just don't want to be anywhere else, do you? The spirit can move, which I think then helps people take that back with them and understand that the spirit is with them all the time.
There's all these memories that have come through, and there's that expectation for the future as well. It gives them that moment to actually take a step back and really focus on their faith. and where they want to be going next.
Couldn't mix because of COVID, you know, the rules and everything, so I would come in. There was nobody around, nothing to fill the space. It just all echoed in there, it's a strange feeling.
There was a lot of groups that didn't come back after COVID as well. Whether it was just the schools decided to go with closer options to them or whether the funding's not there at the moment. But it doesn't seem to be at the pre-COVID bookings that we did have.
My first understanding of the roof was sadly when I came in one day and it was pouring through the kitchen.
I mean, we always used to have, when I first came here, a couple of bowls up in the roof. So that was, 10 years ago, there were leaks coming through there. But obviously it's gradually got worse. And so instead of a few bowls, I've got big containers up there now. But luckily the guys are here now and they're working on it.
It's been amazing that through COVID, Dunfield got £75,000. I was gobsmacked when the call came for £150,000 for the roof. I'm just amazed where all that money's come from.
What do you think of this vision that they wanted in 1977 for Dunfield? A home where people from all areas and different faiths may sense the spirit of Christ.
That's what it is now, isn't
I
it?
think so, even if you're not part of the community of Christ.
Yeah, well, they've achieved that.
And a haven where fellowship, peace and joy can be enjoyed.
Still is, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they're already ticking what they set out in 1977 and we're still hopefully continuing with.
Yeah.
We've got a Trefoil Guild group that are coming later this year, and that's the Old Girl Guiders.
We get Fruit Fest here, don't we?
Yeah.
So they come here for a week, and we leave the kitchens to them to sort it out.
Raw vegan.
Another group that we've had recently was a young farmers group, where they just decorated a cardboard box and people had to run around the field pretending like they were in a wacky race.
You can come and use Dunfield and have a picnic in the grounds. So it's all good for Dunfield that even local people are now more aware of what Dunfield is about, where Dunfield is.
Everybody who's made Dunfield happen, their spirit is here. I'm a great believer of that they won't be forgotten because of what they've done for Dunfield.
I always think that Dunfield belongs to everyone, so we as a church own it and we belong to Dunfield, but also all these other people that have come to Dunfield over the years and who will come to Dunfield in the future, that Dunfield belongs to them as well.
The people that bought Dunfield had no idea really how it would develop. And I think we're in that same position now. Huge stumbling blocks to get through, but we can do it because Dunfield's been in this position before and people have found ways. And I think it's just being creative in how we do that.